Alright, so as I talked about yesterday, the founders of Black Lives Matter have now removed any doubt as to whether they are outright Marxists and have stated pretty unequivocally that that is the ideology they align with. Now, this is odd to me because are there not members of their group destroying and tearing down statues? I promise this is connected. But what are these statues? They're of Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Andrew Jackson, all of whom were slave owners, that is true. And I'm sure by today's standards they likely did not hold what we would consider a very good view on racism. Now, it's a bit beside the point, but Washington and Jefferson, despite owning slaves, did quarrel with the institution and struggled with it ethically. And would they have been better people if they had stood up against it more and actually refused to own any slaves? Sure. But that's not really the point of this. The point is that the founders of Black Lives Matter identify or sympathize with Marxism, and there is a total of 0 outcries that I have seen or heard from people wearing Che Guevara t-shirts at these protests. In fact, it's openly celebrated. It's a good way to show that you're one of them, you're a part of the team. Now, this is weird. Marx and Che Guevara, these are two people who are vitriolically, horrifyingly racist to a staggering degree. You can look up what they've said and written on the topic. I can't even repeat it here, but suffice it to say, if you were to bring those quotes to those BLM founders, but didn't tell them who said those quotes, they would likely assume it was a quote from some Richard Spencer type character or some other neo-Nazi. Or maybe they know the quotes and know they're from Marx and Che Guevara and they write it off, or think that Marx and Guevara are too important to be diminished in their importance just because they happen to be highly racist. Now, what's the issue here, and what does it have to do with those statues? Well, you might notice how nuance is ignored when it comes to those statues, those symbols that are simply decreed to be representative of the racist patriarchy and oppression. Destroy them and then dust yourself off. That's all there is to it. However, idolizing and in fact throwing yourself into Marxian ideology, which is directly named after a known racist, that is somehow okay. Now, I can't be the only one to see the hypocrisy here. Men who owned slaves, but also furthered some fantastic ideas which they did not always follow through on much of the time, but nevertheless they did talk a good talk, but their walk could have been better. Okay, you should destroy their statues. Do your best to erase them from history. Now, for Marx and Che Guevara, who, by the way, for what it's worth, lived far more recently than Jefferson, Washington, or Jackson, but Marx and Che Guevara align with the ideology named after Marx, who was, as I said, a horrible racist, and not only express admiration for Che Guevara, but actually wear t-shirts with the guy's face on it. I have to ask myself how seriously I can take you, because they make it exceedingly difficult to take them seriously. And now, by the way, just because one doesn't want to see those statues torn down does not mean you can't make legitimate criticisms of them, as I have done. But if you're going to insist they be torn down, then I would insist you be consistent with your outrage and disaffect from the Marxist ranks, as that ideology has a founder that was terribly racist, and it's easy to look up. Or you could decide to leave the statues up and add that asterisk of how you don't respect or revere these men for owning slaves, and that Marx and Guevara made many unfortunate comments about race, but you think their message is so important you're willing to give them a pass. That's fine too. After all, you don't have to agree with everything one person stands for, nor do you have to think of them as even a good person to respect some of the ideals they might profess. After all, I can think highly of the Magna Carta, but that doesn't mean I'm King John's #1 fan. ANCAPs can refuse to vote, but they could have a great deal of respect for Ron Paul. Marxists could be Marxists, but still think that the world is better off with Elon Musk doing all the crazy things he's doing. Those are all possible scenarios. They're not outside the realm of possibility. So the only thing I'm saying, pointing out and asking for, is that they be consistent. You can't have it both ways forever and expect to be taken seriously for very long. But that's all for now. Like, subscribe, and share, and take it easy.